I am on a massive win streak in chess.com, and I can show you guys exactly how I did it. Starting with this first game, you can see I just simply developed. You look at my opponent, and they're just not developing at all. So what ended up happening is they felt pressure to develop, so they put out the bishop, which allowed me to take a free pawn, and from there, easy game. In my second game, my opponent found himself in a tricky position. He felt the need to open up and defend this pawn, but by doing so, he actually ended up blundering because what I can do is I can actually take and then take. And with that, I do get another brilliant move during this stretch. Now this third game, it's more or less put in the video in order to see if you guys are paying attention. And if you are, let me know down below in the comments. So I played my wife, and she was trying her best. But in this game specifically, she had a better queen than mine, so I tried to trade it off. And she was snoozing. So she ended up just blundering a queen. So that's how I got my third one at least. Let's move on. In this fourth game, my opponent just wasn't quite as sharp in the opening, so they moved a bad queen map 3 and allowed me to push my pawns and just pressure pieces, you know? Just got a free piece there. And during the same game, I was able to find another brilliant move during the streak of bishop takes g4. And this is obviously, as you can see, to hold on to the game, but I ended up winning the game anyways because, you know, I'm just that good. This game was an ugly game, but as you play chess, you're going to get ugly games, ugly positions, and you just gotta persevere. My opponent was setting up the d5 push, and I just missed it. So they go ahead and do that, and they end up winning a piece. But not too long after that, I ended up setting up my own tricks with c4, and there's still ways for my opponent to get out of it, but they ended up blundering, and I evened the game and ended up taking the victory with a disgusting mate on g7. In game number 6 of my 10 win streak, this may have been my best game of chess ever played, and it is an opening that I've been working on recently, so I'm really happy to see progress with it. Ruy Lopez, little e4 action, bishop on the knight, and then I just ended up pushing. I saw the idea, the spirit of Ruy Lopez is to push that c3, d4, do it successfully, and you can just watch how I just destroy his structure, his pieces, threat, keeping pins on the knight, trading, and ultimately just forcing out a pretty good resign, or as you guys like to call it, resignation. In my 7th straight win, I ended up focusing on pawn movement in order to get the win. I was beginning to see how weak his pawns were, how weak his knight was. His position was seemingly falling apart, so I ended up pushing e4, which was a miss, but it's really hard for him to find the next move, which is actually d5 push. Securing his structure a little bit better, opening up the queen, space for his knight to attack as well. But it's very hard to find, understandable. So what I ended up doing was securing my pawn structure, my position, and opening up my bishop for the attacks. And from here he's really on the back foot, so he ended up putting his bishop back, I pushed the pawn again, got a piece for a pawn, and from there, easy money. Now we're into my 8th game, where my opponent sadly missed that I'm going to double his pawn. He tried to develop his queen, so I took, he takes, and then I threatened something, which apparently isn't the best, but he's like, okay, I want to threaten his queen, but then I take, and then to secure the win, my opponent just simply blundered. He wanted a pawn, and I wanted 2 rooks. In my 9th game, I found myself in quite the pickle, but I kept enough pieces on the board, and I pressured enough early with some poor play, but I was able to pressure the queen, who was out in the middle of the board, and just, if you look at our time, you can tell this person, they're moving quickly, so another big thing is trying to manage your time just perfectly, and I take with the knight, and he resigns shortly after that. So in my 10th straight win, in my most recent game, it was a very even game overall throughout. He was focusing a lot on trying to take out my b7 pawn, and it's just really hard for him to get there without getting other pawns sacrificed. So what I ended up doing is trying to get my king a little bit more active, setting up for rook trades, securing my pawn structure, and if you take a look at the pawn structure, that's a key thing coming up right here. Finishing up the rook trades, and then attacking this pawn on a4, which also allows my king to move up and get deeper position. So what you see here is he's left this pawn undefended now, and this pawn is hanging on a thread. But the real goal here is for me to either sneak my king up here, but not that way, but in order to take these pawns, or sneak my king up here, which would be ideal in order to attack, and because there's no way his king is getting in here at this point. So what ended up happening is I got my king there, he tried to move his bishop to defend, and then I move my king here, because if he tries to move his bishop back here, then I mean the same thing basically happens where I go here threatening it, and then he has to pick one of these squares. After that, I just simply infiltrated and started chunking the pawns, and yeah, there's not much more he can do at this point. So as you guys can see, it's not that difficult to win 10 games in a row at the level 1500-1600 chess. You could say, oh, I got lucky because of all the blunders my opponent made, but blunders are still a common thing at this level. Let me know some of your guys' best win streaks, and stay tuned to see where this win streak ends up.